All right, the latest book that I finished is The Stranger in the Woods, which is by Michael Finkel. It's the extraordinary story of the last true hermit. The story is set in Maine, which, Coach, if I remember right, this is real close to you. You should know this story. But his name is Christopher Knight. The gentleman spent 27 years as a hermit in the woods outside of a residential area slash camp for developmentally challenged kids. Well, he was 20 years old when he walked away from his life. He had originally from Maine. He went to Boston, went to electronics school, took a job there, installing alarms into homes and businesses. It lasted about a year. During that process, his brother bought him or co-signed on a car that he just up one day, took the car, cashed his last paycheck, took a road trip south, eventually made his way back. About the time he was about to run out of gas, he was starting to get hungry. He abandoned the car, left the keys on the console, took a tent and a little bit of food, and that was the last time he had any true contact with civilization. He found a space that wasn't but a couple hundred yards away from a populated area. He hid everything that he needed underneath the thicket and the natural cover that the woods offered. For 27 years, he would steal what he needed in order to survive. He would break into unoccupied cabins. He would take food, mattresses, clothing, books, whatever. He felt a lot of remorse for what he did, but he knew that he needed it in order to survive. Eventually, he was captured in the 27th year whenever he was restocking his food at the camp for the developmentally challenged. A park ranger and a state police officer took him into custody, and he quickly admitted to everything that he had done wrong. He said he did it for survival. He mentioned that during the 27 years he had made contact with somebody once. They exchanged just a greeting whenever someone was hiking on a lesser traveled trail near where he was living. In the winters, he didn't set a fire because he didn't want to give away his location. He had multiple sleeping bags and blankets and things. He established a routine that during the winter he would go to sleep at 7:30 and then wake up at promptly 2 a.m. He figured that that was a way to help him adjust to the cold without any of the warmth, because if he stayed in bed any longer, he potentially would die, as well as the condensation inside of his sleeping quarters would freeze, which would in turn freeze his body. He went to jail, or he went to a holding cell. He didn't want his family to know that he had been found. His mother's in her 80s. His father had passed away a few years before that he was arrested. The most difficult thing that he seemed was readjusting to society. He had to go through court, probation, check-ins, and finding a job, none of which he found any happiness. Lots of people reached out to him. They tried to forge a relationship, but he wanted nothing of it. The gentleman that wrote this book wrote a letter to him, kind of just admiring what he had accomplished, and shared some anecdotes about his time out on the trails and in the woods. Eventually, he did get a response. They built this relationship. It was more of a, I don't really want to talk to you, but I don't want to talk to anybody else. It was very impersonal, but at the same time, it was the only contact that he was allowing himself to have. He made it very clear that he was not grateful, they were not friends, and that this was just a conversation whenever they had it. He followed him along through the time that he was being held in his court case, and eventually he was told to go away. One final little story that the guy had told was about basically wanting to kill himself because he couldn't adjust to society. The writer felt a lot of mixed feelings about that, reached out to some experts to figure out what he should do in terms of the information he had. Eventually, There was one last bit of communication that made him feel at ease, that the guy had kind of turned a new leaf, because he had, in a letter that basically said nothing, he had drawn a picture at the bottom in color of a flower to kind of show that there was a new life. I couldn't imagine spending 27 years by myself. Granted, I don't mind being by myself, but I do feel like as I was reading through this book that there is a certain expectation of social interaction that we desire, and whenever we haven't been around people for a while, it doesn't. It's more difficult. But as a whole, from what I understand, he's adjusted well to society. He's got a job and whatnot. He's kind of rebuilt the relationship with his family because he felt bad because he was raised to not steal and to make do with what he had. But till the next book, thank you guys. Check this one out.